All right, so continuing with the recent trend of Major League Soccer teams rebranding and changing their names, badges, colors, and we talked about this recently about the Montreal Impact changing their name to Club de Football Montreal in a video just a couple of weeks ago. You can go back here on the channel and check that out. But this year, we're going to see yet another rebrand of a Major League Soccer team, and that is the Houston Dynamo, who are going to be known now as officially Houston Dynamo Football Club. Now, we've seen over the last few years a lot, well, I guess 10 years maybe, a lot of Major League Soccer teams wanting to be known as football clubs. They throw that FC onto the end of their names. And really, the first team that did that was Toronto FC back in, guess it was 2007 season when they debuted in Major League Soccer. And it was a way to get away from this idea of soccer being the name used predominantly in the U.S. to label these teams as, and to give them kind of a European or South American feel. Now, Houston Dynamo have been around for quite some time. They're two-time MLS Cup winners. They won the Cup in back in 2006 and 2007, and this is a team with a lineage here in Major League Soccer. Now, technically is the original San Jose Clash / Earthquakes team. And in 2005, once they were unable to get a new stadium built, they moved to Houston and took on the Houston Dynamo name. And of course, we now have a San Jose Earthquakes team that has moved back into the area as an expansion franchise, and took up the mantle of the Earthquakes. But by all intents and purposes, this is the actual franchise that was the original Earthquakes. If you go back to Major League Soccer, from back in the day, and your history about the league. So a lot of newer fans or older fans may even forget that nowadays. But after moving to Houston, we saw the Dynamo win back-to-back MLS Cups, and really becoming one of those premier teams at the end of the noughties and going into the teens, the 2000 teens. But over the last 10 years, I guess it has been 5 to 10 years, we've seen Houston kind of fall by the wayside as one of the premier teams in the league. They're still, roughly fighting for a playoff spot every year, but they're just not that premier team that they were 15 years ago. I'm a very much a cynic around a lot of Major League Soccer stuff. I've written about it for years. I've talked about this league for years. I grew up watching this league in the U.S., so I'm very cynical about it. And a lot of this just kind of comes off as a way to spark some new fan interest and to say to the people of Houston, hey, we're still here. We're still this soccer club here in the city. So they've rebranded this year. They've changed their badge. You can see right there on your screen. This is the previous badge, the Houston Dynamo badge, which isn't a terrible badge. It's not great, but it's not terrible. There is a bit of a feel of American youth soccer to it. So it's not like the greatest thing that was in MLS, but it wasn't the worst thing. And like I said, we've seen teams recently rebrand. Montreal Impact, which I gave my thoughts on their new badge and it being a bit of a mess in the previous video on MLS. And we saw the Chicago Fire rebrand last year, and that just was a shambles. And they're already ready to change their badge once more. But let's look at the new Houston badge. Okay, so this is the new Houston Dynamo FC badge, and you can see lots of differences to this. And you see a bit of a different font there with Houston. You see the design just completely different. A lot of black and orange and white, obviously there. And you see the interconnected H and D, which it looks kind of all right. It doesn't look terrible. And to me, it feels like that H and D is almost like something you would see in Major League Baseball, the way that it's interconnected and intertwined. And to be honest, that Houston font reminds me of the Houston Astros baseball team. And of course, the colors are very similar, orange and black, to the Houston Astros baseball team. So there's a very much a feel for me, as someone who watches baseball as well as Major League Soccer, that this is very similar to that feel, very similar to that Houston Astros feel. And obviously, I'm assuming Major League Soccer and Houston Dynamo contacted a local or national marketing company to produce this. Rather than something organic coming, it was more of something produced by a company and some marketing execs. And that's the kind of way I'm pretty sure that most MLS teams work, is by contacting, premier marketing agencies, and they have their designers get to work with it. And that's why we have sometimes explanations post the creation of a badge in Major League Soccer and North American soccer of why that was chosen. But the badge was not only created for Houston here and the rename, but it was also to bring the Dynamo in line with their sister team, the Houston Dash, which is a National Women's Soccer League team. And so both teams will have a very similar badge, similar colors, and similar name going forward. So that's another reason why they've decided to rebrand in this way. And after the rebrand, the club released a statement saying, and I'm going to read that now: the first step of becoming the type of club that represents a great community like Houston. And so that's in reference to the badge. And then they went on to say, significant shift in philosophy and vision today as part of a new cohesive brand identity that is rooted in the Bayou City. So, they feel like this rebrand with the name, adding football club there, and the badge is just going to be a better connection with the city. That's a lot of marketing jargon. I think this is a way to really, really try to attract new fans. I believe Houston, not counting last year, the 2020 season, but in 2019, I believe Houston had one of the lowest home attendances in Major League Soccer, and so this could be a part of the reason for that rebrand. So, as I said before, this is another rebrand. We're having two this season: Montreal and Houston, but it's the third in the last two seasons because, again, as I said earlier, Chicago Fire renamed themselves last year, changing everything. So again, go back onto YouTube here, onto my channel, and check out what I said about the Montreal Impact and their rebrand going forward for the 2021 season. Now, while I'll admit I hate it when Major League Soccer clubs do rebrand and they change what they've been doing and they change their name and their colors, it seems to occur a lot of times after a poor run of years, a poor run of seasons, and some fan disinterest. Compared to what Chicago did last year and compared to what Montreal's done, this is minor in the grand scheme of things because we're just getting a badge redesign. We get those in Europe every once in a while, and we're getting a slight name tweak. So the football club put on to the end of the Houston Dynamo name rather than just being Houston Dynamo. But the colors are staying the same. I think maybe we're going to see a little bit more black. More black will be being prominent in the badge here, as you can see, as well as maybe in the kits. But for the most part, we're not seeing a huge change compared to those other rebrands that we've had. And to be honest, I think it's kind of silly that Major League Soccer and Houston Dynamo have called this a rebrand because it's not necessarily a rebrand like you would think. If you think about Major League Soccer rebrands, again with Montreal, they've changed their colors, they've changed their name completely, they've taken Impact completely out of it, and they've altered their badge. If you go back to the end of the noughties, whenever the Kansas City Wizards rebranded, they became Sporting Kansas City. That was a huge rebrand. They are basically a completely different team, even though they have the lineage of the Wizards. It's a completely different team. They changed colors. The kits are completely different. They changed their badge. They changed their name. They changed their stadium. They changed pretty much everything to be more in line with European and South American teams. And while the badge that Sporting Kansas City has is very generic and very much something that you would see from a generic marketing team, it still was something better than what they had when they were the Wizards. And so that was a rebrand that was just completely different. This is just a minor tweak for a rebrand, in my opinion. And it also just brings the dash underneath the umbrella for the club. So I don't really mind this. And I think that if you go back, if you compare the two badges, this is slightly better. I'm not a huge fan of the hexagonal shape of the badge. I'm not a big fan of that. I like the H and D intertwined. I don't like necessarily the shape of the badge. I think maybe it would look nicer maybe as a circle, or perhaps not even in any kind of a shape. Maybe if you just had the H and the D on the shirt with Houston Dynamo FC underneath, that might look great. Regardless, I don't think this is a bad badge. I don't think that this is a bad thing to do. And to be honest, I don't think it necessarily is a step forward or step above, but it's certainly not a step back. I guess you could say this is a sideways move, and one that didn't really necessarily need to be labeled as a rebrand. So, let me know what your thoughts are on the rebrand of Houston Dynamo in the comments below. And before we go, let's just take a look at those kits that Houston are going to wear this year, because those have been released as well prior to the season kicking off here in April. Okay, so as you can see there, we've got the new Adidas-made Houston Dynamo kits for the 2021 season. And you can see that we've got the badge there. And to be honest, the badge looks really nice on that shirt. And you've got the 2 stars for their 2006 and 2007 MLS Cup wins. And yeah, that badge actually looks really nice, even with the hexagonal shape on the shirt. What I really noticed about the shirt is that Houston has gone with a much deeper orange than what I remember them having a few years ago. It always seemed like for quite some time they had like a lighter orange. This could be possibly the reason actually for this could possibly be because of FC Cincinnati being in the league now, having a blue and an orange color. So that makes sense that they would go for a darker look, and I like that black that fringes the kit that goes with the sleeves as well as the collar and the 3 stripes down the shoulders. So this is actually a really nice kit in my opinion. And again, like I said, I don't like the hexagonal shape on its own from the pictures that we saw earlier, but actually on that kit it looks pretty good. So I actually think that kit is a really nice one. Of course, I'm a bit particular about shirts when I purchase them, because to me, the shirt sponsor can make or break a shirt. And although this isn't a terrible shirt sponsor, obviously it's for the MD Anderson Cancer Center there in Houston, but I'm not a huge fan of that sponsor across the front. So for me, that is a knock on the shirt, is that sponsor. I do like a clean shirt without the sponsor. And like I say, the sponsor can make or break a shirt sometimes, in my opinion. Okay, so going back to the old Houston Dynamo badge, this is what we saw. This is what we saw for so many years, 15 years, I guess it was, of Houston Dynamo being in the league. And now we've got this new one, the hexagonal shape with the intertwined H and D. And again, it does make me think of the Houston Astros baseball team with those the font of the lettering. But again, it's not terrible. It's a minor tweak, and I don't see this as necessarily a rebrand like we've seen with, say, Montreal or Chicago. And I like it. And those shirts do look good, the badge on those shirts. So guys, let me know what you think about the new Houston Dynamo rebrand, as they say, the change of the badge and the change of the name. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all the things I post here. I post a lot about kits as well as some general sports and football things going on around the world. And you can stay up to date on everything that I post here as we go forward. And of course, you can go back and watch that previous video I did on Montreal Impact and their rebrand here on the channel. And I will see you guys soon here on YouTube.